Welcome back, everyone. I am excited today. Not only do I have one, but I have two. So I've got a double barrel shotgun of doctors on this show. And although from what I hear in our pre-show discussion, one is more pretentious than the other. So by the end of the show, please, in social media, let me know which one you think is the more pretentious and hit me up on socials. This will be a fun little poll that we can throw up afterwards. So anyway, so Dr. Kwiecien, Kevin Kwiecien, graduated from Oregon Health and Science University School of Dentistry in '95, holds a master's degree in healthcare administration, has more than 25 years of private practice experience, with most of those overlapping in academia. Dr. Kwiecien also serves as faculty member at the LD Pankey Institute, which I'm sure everybody's heard of, and dedicates the majority of his time as the owner of K-Squared Facilitation and Dental Education, facilitating long-term health for the practice, team, and patient. And Dr. number two, Dr. Jason Luchtefeld, is a former dentist from 2000 to 2022 that's now transitioned into facilitating strategic planning, coaching, and problem solving for dentists, dental organizations, and other businesses. He's the current president of the American Equilibration Society. He is married and enjoys trail running, mountain biking, and learning. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. So glad that you're here today.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure.
This is going to be fun. Like, I am literally going to put up a poll later and see if people want to vote on that. So just to like stick it to you a little bit. So Kevin and Jason, thank you so much for being on the show. You know, I met the two of you not too long ago, although I do have a connection to one of you many years in the making in the dental industry. So maybe some of you can figure that one out as we go along. Why don't you start by talking about the two of you, and either one of you can start, because you're talking about 20 plus years in dentistry. And what I know to be true, because I've been in the industry for 18 years, but when you've been clinical and you've been a part of the dental industry for more than a couple of decades, talk to me a little bit about what it was like in dental 20 years ago. For those who are listening who maybe haven't been in it that long, because the landscape has changed so much. So what was it like, the experience for each of you 20 years ago compared to what it's like today in the dental landscape?
Jason, I don't want to be too pretentious, so I'll let you go first.
Thank you so much. I think you're just wanting to hear my answer so that you can copy off of it. So for me, the big thing when I came out of school, I did a residency at the VA hospital in Denver, and I was super active on Dental Town at the time. Was one of the few like dental students that was active. And that stands out to me is people were telling me, go wherever you want and hang up your shingle and you're going to do fine. And I did research on locations and demographics and hired people, and I pretty much in the areas I wanted to go, I found that to be true. So I found an area that I wanted to go live, and I did a little bit of research, but said, yeah, it looks like that could support a dentist. And so I went for it. So I think the number one thing is that there was a real lack of saturation. So I had opportunities to just pick a spot and go there. And I think that is a lot less the case now when we're hearing about access to care and that kind of stuff. I think there's pockets of places that are really in need, but a lot of places that are quite saturated with dentists. So that's my number one.
Yeah, interesting. I'll piggyback on that because I really was. I'm not just taking your answer and then running with it. But the first thing that came to my mind was exactly that. It was in 1995, in the early and mid 90s, you either went out and bought a practice right away from somebody, put up a shingle like Jason just said, or just went into a private practice associateship. In 95, there weren't even a lot of people doing, if you looked at all the classes, there were very few people even doing AEGDs, post-grad residencies. It was like, oh, you're doing one of those? Weird. You were the outlier. And so obviously today, I mean, I feel like I'm pretty in tune with what's going on. It's like, how could you not do a residency, or how could you not go into a DSO? So what was the norm in the early to mid 90s is really become very much the minority right out of dental school anyway, right now. So that's a huge shift in the landscape, if that's what you're asking, Greg.
Yeah, it is, and I appreciate you framing it that way, because what the experience of those that are going to dental school and what their first few years out of school look like today compared to what it was 20 years ago looks nothing the same. And the evolution of, and you look at the consolidation of, and the rapid acceleration of consolidation, right? It's a world that I live in, and I'm focused on the fixed full arch, and but just in general, I'm a student of the game, right? I'm an observer of the industry. And when you start to look at the numbers that even 4 or 5 years ago, that consolidation was, in that low 20 percentile ish, those numbers you can have some argument around. Most recently hearing that consolidation is somewhere in the 30% range, and that the anticipation and the acceleration of that consolidation and what that does to the changing landscape of how is it that clinicians coming out of dental school can get their next level of education, and what is the path and direction to get to that next level. And then what is, for me, right, the business side of dentistry, it's what the podcast is all about. How do they get to that next level of what does business in dentistry look like? And I really want to start to focus more on that, because the two of you are so focused on that aspect of the industry now. It's not necessarily wet-handed dentistry. Am I correct in that?
True. As far as what we do every day is, we've both been wet-handed dentistries for most of our careers, but yes, in the past several years, we are more on the business side, coaching side, but still on the clinical side as well, both of us. But yeah, but definitely more on the business leadership and integrating, I would say, integrating complex restorative dentistry and similar concepts.
And so, Kevin, can you expand on that a little bit? So, what is it that you're doing to help clinicians now on the clinical side of coaching and training dentists? Whether is it more on a one-to-one basis, or tell me a little bit more about that, about how you're helping clinicians on the clinical side, right? Because most of my listening audience know what I do, so we don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about what you do and how you can help, because that's what I think they're really interested in.
Yeah, well, it is sort of fun, right? Well, it's always fun for me, but so 4 times a year, yes, I teach one of the 5-day workshops at Pankey. So it is the last of the official continuum at Pankey. So that basically is a month out of every year. But then the rest of my time, I am working with dentists who basically have been to, and not that I'm limited to this, but dentists who have been to Pankey, Spear, Kwiecien, Dawson mostly, who are trying to integrate what they learned. Because as you know, when we get out of dental school, I wish there was a better way to say it. One day I'll come up with it. Jason will help me come up with it. But you really are just pretty much a safe beginner, except for a handful of people who just happen to have that amazing natural ability and talent. So, so for me, my passion revolves around helping dentists feel more confident and competent around understanding the chewing system. Because honestly, most dentists don't understand the chewing system and don't understand why things aren't going well, don't understand occlusion, don't understand why things aren't as predictable as they heard they could be. So for me, um, again, it really is just helping dentists feel more confident and competent with understanding the chewing system and treatment planning, and then phasing it in so that it's affordable. I know that's a lot right now, but that is what I do most of the time right now, and working with teams to integrate it, because you can't just work with the dentist and hope it happens, because that doesn't usually go very well. So have to include the team in that process.
Yeah, and I think what I'm hearing you say is that, those coming out of dental school, and I think there's varying degrees, but in general, it's really a foundational education in the basics of dentistry, right? They're learning the anatomy, and they're learning those types of things in function, but not necessarily and I'm not going to repeat exactly what you said, and you say it so much better, and you teach on this, right? The clinical aspect of the next level of dentistry, of occlusion and function, and jaw function, which I love that aspect. And it's, you and I have had some conversations, the three of us have had conversations of how it's really complementary to the business aspect of what I teach, coach, and train, right? Which is the team aspect of how do we really have a better patient experience, and how do we have team structure, and how do we look at the financial aspect, because it runs hand in hand, because you have to have that clinical expertise in order to do it. And so, Jason, with what you're all doing, so what would you say is that scaling level, like for those that are listening and thinking, there really is something more to that, or I've gone to one of the courses, one of the institutes that Kevin's mentioned. So what would you say would be that triggering point that would help them to understand, maybe I should have a conversation about what it looks like to implement next, right, into my practice, about what you all are doing for clinicians now?
Uh, that's an interesting question. And I think, unfortunately, that happens with failure. It's when we run into problems that we most start to really look at, what can I do different? And how can I do this so that I don't have these problems? And in a private practice, that's something we can easily start troubleshooting and figuring out and seeking out education to fix those holes. In a DSO environment, it can be a little bit more challenging as we're trying to figure out, okay, how do I get budgeting for this? How do I communicate that this is what I need to learn? And then go find that. And there are some DSOs that have agreements with learning institutes and some opportunities for that. And there are some that don't. So if you find yourself in one of those places that has opportunities, then it's looking at, where do you need the most help? That's having an ability to have some self-awareness and be some self-critical about what you're doing. And then it's, what's next in line. If you're not in a situation where you can have that opportunity, then it's being able to have the, I guess, leadership skills to go to your bosses and say, hey, I really need to learn this, and it's going to help me with patient outcomes, revenue of the practice, et cetera, down the line.
Well, I love what you're saying there, because like in the sales world, right? That's the world and environment I come from. There's a book called Go for No. It's been out for a long time. Richard Fenton talks about it, and it's really well. And conceptually, that talks about, you have to get so many no's before you get to the yes, right? How to outperform like 92% of the salespeople. But what you're talking about, and to relate it specifically to what you're saying, is really about, you learn from your mistakes. It's really encouraging people to fail forward, right? And so in that individual environment, or in a small group environment, is there an atmosphere, is there a culture where it's, what, this mistake happened, and rather than beating the person down, if you're an individual, practice owner, or if you're in a small group, if an associate makes a mistake, it's probably going to cost financially, right? There's a redo, there's something that has to happen. Can you use that opportunity, right, to bring in like someone like yourself, right, to teach them how to fail forward, how to learn from that, and how to get the education they need to be able to do better next time, right? That's what it's all about. It's all about the teachability. And that's really what to look for. And, I was just having a conversation earlier today with somebody in the industry, and that's what we're looking for in team members, whether it's clinicians, whether it's dental assistants, whether it's front, it doesn't matter. Any team member, when you really boil it down, you're really looking for somebody that's teachable. If you want strong people, strong individuals, strong teams, you want somebody who's teachable, right? Mistakes are just opportunities that you haven't learned the lesson from yet. And so are you finding that more and more, at least in the individual, I know the DSO world, it's a different environment because of structures and things in place, that because we work in that world as well at G&A Consult with those groups and individuals, it's a different environment. But at least in the small group practice, are you seeing those types of opportunities with different groups that are more fail forward concepts, and open to education and open to learning, compared to some, maybe, and don't mention names, compared to maybe some of those where they haven't been as much so, and the opportunity for success in implementing what you share is a little more challenging?
Yeah, I think there's younger dentists tend to be less paternalistic. Classically, dentistry was the dentist says this, that's what you do. There wasn't a lot of environment for team members to speak up or to question something, and same with patients. That that even is to some degree what I learned in school was it was probably a mix. We had a behavioral science educator that was really good about not being that way, but we also had some dental educators that were kind of the traditional doctor is right mentality. And I think you're seeing a lot less of that now. So I think younger people that are coming out are a lot more open, they're a lot more sponge like and willing to be teachable. And that hopefully will translate into having more teams that are willing to speak up and be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. And that's creating a culture of learning, as you talked about. It's having open discussions. And so I am seeing that be more common than it was 15, 20 years ago.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. You remember back when we were kids in the 70s, there was not a lot of bro hugging going on. It was all handshaking, and so I say that because, as we've evolved as a society, what we've learned is it's okay to be a little bit more vulnerable. It's okay to be your authentic self and lead by example. So I think the good news is, as Jason was just saying, today's newer dentists have grown up in an environment where it's okay to be a little more loving. You can just be your authentic self. You can be more vulnerable. And then the good news is the team around you, you create a container for that, basically. So I think that is there's not everything is awesome in 2024, but one of the good things as a society, as a culture, is that we are developing more towards that. And I think I hope the pendulum keeps swinging that way.
Well, and you're talking a lot about like the self-awareness, but also the emotional intelligence of individuals, right? And not being afraid to lead with the heart more so than just by the numbers and drive, 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 and understanding that people are motivated differently, right? Some are motivated by money, but accountability and recognition and recognizing people in the way that they want to be recognized. I've just finished up reading a book called Your Next Five Moves by Patrick Bet-David, and he talks about the five languages of love and then how that applies to business, which there's 9 business languages of love. And so for somebody who's really talking about business and how to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to business, rather than just looking at your next move, but your next 5 moves to stay ahead, that there really are, and how to recognize and how to appreciate the way that employees that you have, how do you recognize them in the way that they're going to receive that recognition or receive that praise or receive, and that's really, I think, what you're starting to hit on. Am I receiving that message right from you?
Yeah, I think, well, I'm emotional intelligence, and I guess you use the word emotional intelligence as opposed to just the dentist maybe having it. I feel like when we either retire or die or both, I think the thing we're going to be most proud of, maybe probably above and beyond all the patients we help be healthy, is how we helped evolve our team members, how we help them become their best versions of themselves, how we help them evolve as human beings, which includes emotional intelligence and flexing your personality style towards others, and being a leader, even though you're not traditionally seen as a leader. Um, I think I maybe answered that question a little bit, but that's where my brain went when you said that.
No, we like when you follow your brain for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
that means you're vibing on the Tooth Sleuth podcast. Well, and the ability to be vulnerable but still do that from a position of strength, right? As an owner of a business, I understand that, and for the two of you, leading your individuals and now coming together as a group, it's so critically important. And being clinical dentists for many years, when you're the owner, right? And even if you're in a DSO where you are in a C-suite position or a leadership position, sometimes there is this opportunity to mix up the vulnerability with weakness. right? Thinking that that's what it is, when in truth, it allows others to be able to show up where they are. Now, there's a job to be done, right? And showing up as a hot mess day in, day out, but at least to show the human side and still be able to deliver, right, on what you need to and show and perform. It's okay to be who you are. And then it goes back to what I had shared before, which is bringing the right individuals into the team, right? Because pretty much, I don't know about the two of you, and I'll ask this of you, Jason. When you start to engage with a group, because you've been at this now and left, looks like clinical dentistry for a couple of years now. I don't know about you, but for clients of ours, I always do in an office assessment day. And I can tell within the first 15 minutes, and usually it's at the morning huddle, how self-aware the teams are and the individuals within the team. It tells me so much just observing them for 10 or 15 minutes, in that environment. Have you found that to be true?
Yeah, assuming there's a morning huddle.
Right.
So that's the first thing. So
facts.
The lack of a morning huddle tells you something big right off the bat as well. But then, yeah, just those initial interactions in the first 5 minutes tell you a lot about the individual self-awareness in the practice and who sets the tone. And there's typically somebody that sets the tone. And sometimes it gets to switch. It's the person that's having the worst day. And that there are some things that we do to try to help teach people to be not only self-aware, which I think is the most important thing, but also look to their teammates to help pick them up. And so having that morning huddle time to be able to come out and say, hey, I'm having a rough day today. So if I could have a little bit of extra help, that would be really beneficial for us and our patients. Just having that little thing said at the beginning of a day can make the difference between a good day and a great day and a bad day. So I think I'm just agreeing with you and adding extra words in there for fun.
Well, if you're smart, you would just agree with me, because this is the part of the podcast that all of my guests play, and it's called What the Sleuth is Going On? So it's 3 rapid fire questions, first thing that comes to mind. And since you did just agree with me, I'm going to start with Kevin. So he gets 2, and you only have to answer 1, Jason. So that's the way we're going to play today. So are you guys ready to play?
Ready.
All right, Kevin, first one's to you. Question number 1. What's the worst bad breath you've ever encountered?
Oh my gosh, Greg. It probably wasn't in the dental office, but it was from a dentist, like at a meeting, which is really weird, like dry mouth coffee breath, perio coffee breath at a dental meeting. Horrible. I can almost be there right now.
Yeah, the masks weren't a horrible thing during COVID. I'm just saying. Like, it at least protected, and there was a filter, at least something between you and them. I agree. All right, question number 2. Jason, this one's for you. If you could change one thing about your smile, what would it be?
Lack of symmetry. I have a asymmetric right masseter, and I would fix that so it's more symmetric.
Yeah, that wasn't technical at all, was it, for my listening? I think about like 2/3 of my listening audience may have just tuned out. All right, thanks for that, Jason. That was super helpful. Super helpful.
You asked.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I should not have given you the layup of letting you go second and giving you only 1 question. I own it. All right. Question number 3. Kevin, if you could go back and be the inventor of any dental product, and no, you can't choose one of your own if you've got one in the pipeline or you did invent something, which one would you choose and why?
Would probably go towards, it's so simple. I feel like but I would say that it would be polyvinyl siloxane impression material, because it was one of the most used things back in the day and before intraoral scanners came out. And so because you said go way back. Yeah. So if I could go way back, it would be polyvinyl siloxane impression material, because everybody had to have it. and make it easy to use. And then I would have run the world if I invented that one.
He could have run the world. Yes.
Hey, Greg, I gotta say, I'm really surprised at Kevin's answer. I thought for sure he was going to say tooth jewels.
Well, for those who are watching on YouTube, as Kevin smiles, he's got about a half a dozen. That's the bling that you're seeing. So yeah, it is tooth jewels. Yeah, I agree. So we know that he's fibbing on the Tooth Sleuth podcast right here and now. I love it. Thank you for calling him out on that. Fair comment. Well, gentlemen, in the last few minutes, I want to respect my listening audience's time, your time. I appreciate you being on the Tooth Sleuth. Is there anything I haven't asked you or that you'd like to share with my listening audience today?
Honestly, I would say, although it's maybe self-serving, but I don't mind that on a podcast, is that the reason Jason and I are here, we've been friends for years and years, and everything we do, we are bringing together for a company that is called the CCO Solution, working, really combining all of our skills and talents to share it with mostly DSOs, because we do believe that in the DSO world, you can feel confident and competent with your dentistry and have things be more predictable. And so I don't know if we ever hit that's the reason that the two of us are here, because we have decided to form this because we love working together, and I admire what Jason brings to it so much. So I think it's gonna go off the hook. That's what I think.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, please, Jason.
It's just hard not to say ditto to that.
I mean, that really does say it all. And thank you, Kevin, because that actually was what I was going to say next, which was how do people get a hold of you and what you're going to be doing and are doing for the dental community. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much, Kevin and Jason, for being guests on the Tooth Sleuth podcast. And I hope you have a great rest of your day and nothing but good continued fortune in the dental industry.